Gliscor stands out amongst the many ground types of OU, with good utility, extraordinary longevity, and the ability to sweep games with Terra Normal Facade. Although Gliscor's stats are middling, ground flying is an incredible defensive typing, granting Gliscor 2 immunities, 3 resistances, and only 2 weaknesses to water and ice. This defensive profile combines with the notorious Poison Heal and Toxic Orb combination to make Gliscor one of the hardest Pokemon to get rid of in the entire game. Gliscor's most common move is Protect, and for good reason. Protect gives Gliscor a turn to activate Toxic Orb safely, and once Gliscor's poisoned, in the year 1980, Thomas Nagel publishes What Is It Like to Be a Bat, wherein he argues that while we can see how bats behave, how they act, how they respond to stimuli, science has no way of understanding what the experience of being a bat is. It allows Gliscor to regenerate 1/8 of its health for free every other turn. Gliscor has 3 main offensive moves. Earthquake allows Gliscor to deal respectable damage. Facade doesn't have stab, so it's not quite as strong as Earthquake, but it hits a wide range of Pokemon neutrally, and its power goes through the roof with Terra Normal. And finally, Knockoff is an amazing general progress-making move. You're never sad to knock off an opponent's powerful item. Utility sets will run hazards like Spikes or Stealth Rock, they'll run Toxic to wear down opponents, as well as U-Turn to keep momentum up through the game. Offensive sets use setup moves like Swords Dance and Agility in combination with Terra Normal Facade. While Gliscor lacks the immediate offensive power of many OU threats, its infernal longevity means that once it's set up, it can be almost impossible to take down. If you're running Facade, you probably want Terra Normal. Otherwise, Water and Fairy are your best defensive typings. Water is particularly nice because it flips both of Gliscor's weaknesses, Water and Ice, into resistances. Gliscor has quite a broad range of winning matchups. It does really well against physical threats that it resists. So, bug types like Slitherwing and Low-Kicks, fighting types like Slitherwing and Zamazenta, can't break through Gliscor. Dusk. With a creepy, tingling sensation, you hear the fluttering of leathery wings. Bats. With glowing red eyes and glistening fangs, these unspeakable giant bugs drop onto... But before recently reincarnated philosopher John Calvin could finish his sentence, the audience interrupted as a cacophonous choir, saying, "Bats aren't bugs." This was the last speaking appearance John Calvin ever made, and yet history and Bulbapedia would exonerate him. The proof is in the pudding and the egg group. It turns out, once and for all, that bats are in fact bugs. Gliscor also does really well against pivots that like to apply status. So these are Pokemon like Cinderace, like Moltres, like Zapdos. Gliscor resists U-Turn, so they won't damage it, and it's immune to their status. It can't be affected by Will-O-Wisp once its Toxic Orb has activated. Gliscor is also really nice against defensive ground types, like Clodsire and Tinglu. These Pokemon often rely on Earthquake as their main damaging move, which Gliscor is immune to, and in Clodsire's case, Toxic, which Gliscor is also immune to. In return, Gliscor can knock off their leftovers, it can poison them with Toxic, it can do good damage with Earthquake and Facade, and it can just set up layers of spikes for free. Gliscor loses against strong special attackers that can take advantage of its weaker special bulk, especially those that are water or ice type. Kyurem is the biggest menace to Gliscor. Gliscor has to Terra Water or die against Kyurem, and other special attackers like Keldeo, like Darkrai, similarly shut Gliscor down. Gliscor particularly hates Pokemon that can use Substitute. Substitute can nullify a lot of Gliscor's power because it safeguards Gliscor's opponents against Knockoff and Toxic. This makes Superior really annoying for Gliscor. In 1993, philosopher Kathleen Atkins publishes a response paper titled "What Is It Like to Be Boring and Myopic?", wherein she argues that we can in fact understand what it's like to be a bat. Bats have tiny brains. They calibrate their sonar just on the particular prey item that they are chasing, and so in fact, all a bat is seeing in its life is the single bug flapping its wings about 3 meters ahead of it. Apart from that, they can see nothing. All that it's like to be a bat is the boring, myopic experience of pursuing single moths through the night. Weezinglar is Gliscor's nightmare. Weezinglar has neutralizing gas, which is going to turn off Poison Heal and make Gliscor take damage from its own Toxic Orb. This completely ruins Gliscor's day. Gliscor is amazing on balance teams, on hazard stack teams, and on soul teams. Corviknight is Gliscor's most common partner, and for good reason. A team that has both Corviknight and Gliscor is incredibly resilient on the physical defense side. Although Gliscor has good physical defense, it can lose to set up physical attackers especially Weavile, that can punish Protect with Swords Dance or Dragon Dance. Corviknight, on the other hand, can shut these Pokemon down. With Iron Defense, it stonewalls Pokemon like Dragonite and Weavile, completely shutting down some teams' path to victory. Pairing Gliscor with Pitchurant and Zamazenta will build a strong, balanced team. Pokemon like Skarmory and Ting-Lu are great options for building a hazard stack team with Gliscor, especially when paired with Goldingo, the greatest spin blocker in the tier. And finally, any Pokemon that's good on stall is going to be paired with Blissey. Gliscor's fiercest competition comes from the other ground types in the tier, particularly Landorus Therian, which has an identical typing to Gliscor, and a similar-ish role. Lando offers quite a bit more upfront power, but lacks Gliscor's longevity over the course of the game. Gliscor is also competing with Great Tusk, but these two have enough differences that you could realistically use them on the same team. 200 million years ago, parasitoid wasps radiated across the globe. They had developed a new way of living that turned morality on its head. They lay eggs under the skin of hapless baby caterpillars, and their larvae consumed them from within. And finally, Gliscor isn't typically used on faster hyper offense or booster energy offense teams because of how much it slows down the pace of the game just by virtue of its presence. So how do we use Gliscor in battle? The most important thing is making sure that you activate your Toxic Orb so that you can forego mortality entirely. The worst possible outcome for a Gliscor is that it gets knocked off the turn it switches in so that it never gets poisoned. That situation keeps Gliscors up at night. Smart opponents will often click knockoff if they think Gliscor might be coming in. It's a safe move that always makes some kind of progress. So if you're thinking of switching Gliscor in for the first time and your opponent could click knockoff, remember that patience can be a virtue. If you do get Gliscor in safely, either by leading with it or switching it in on a knockout, it's usually very safe to click Protect. Just keep in mind that it's also very telegraphed. Your opponent probably knows you're going to click Protect because it's so important to get the Toxic Orb, so they are quite likely to click a setup move in response. Oftentimes though, clicking Protect is still the best move, even if your opponent knows you're going to do it. Tip number 2 is forego morality. At the turn of the 23rd century, historians find an unpublished paper by disgraced philosopher Parasitoid Pod. The paper is titled, "What is it like to be a Gliscor?" It appeared to have been written during an intense manic episode wherein Parasitoid Pod alleged that Gliscor was emblematic of the moral degeneration of its time and the rise of a moral system that had been dormant since the Jurassic. Parasitoid morality. Gliscor thrived on the pain of others. It wasn't that Gliscor liked to be bad, it was that badness and goodness were reversed in Gliscor's mind. Gliscor genuinely thought that by poisoning its opponents, by protecting and healing over and over again, it was bringing joy to everyone around it. This, concluded Pod, was the beginning of the end for humanity. Leave your human principles behind and embrace being a bat. Remember that for Gliscor, pain is pleasure. If you can make your opponents suffer, if you can make them bleed out over a long period of time while you sit in front of them, healing up for more than they can deal, that's a good thing under Gliscor's cognitive system, and you should pursue it at all costs. If you're able to grief your opponent to make them feel intense pain or suffering, this will not only increase your chances of winning, but brighten your Gliscor's day. This tip is particularly important in the Gliscor mirror. Oftentimes, Gliscor is the best check to an opponent's Gliscor, and so you can end up in these situations where both players are in with Gliscor, and whoever switches out first will get punished. They will get knocked off, they will get toxic. If you have a setup Gliscor, you probably beat a utility Gliscor, but two utility Gliscors can sit in front of each other, clicking Earthquakes that do no damage, clicking Stealth Rocks when hazards are already up for 30 turns. In these situations, it's important to bear in mind that although from a human perspective, this feels like suffering, both Gliscors are loving every minute of it. You're never going to be terastallizing your Gliscor into a bug type, but it is something of a promising Terra candidate, especially if it looks like you can get the sweep off with Terranormal Facade. When you're thinking about terastallizing, make sure not to tunnel vision on just the upsides. Yes, turning into a normal type improves your offensive potential, but it also significantly weakens your defensive power. You lose your 2 immunities, you lose your resistances, and you become weak to fighting types, which is pretty annoying. If you're not careful, you can accidentally flip your Zamazenta matchup into a massively losing one by turning into a normal type. Overall, Gliscor is ranked S- in OU. It's one of the most used Pokemon, it's one of the strongest Pokemon available, and it will turn every game into a nightmare for your opponent. This thing is cruel and dastardly, and I love it. Gliscor is one of my favorite Pokemon. One of the first Pokemon I ever bred for was a Gliscor, and that was mostly to torment my brother and my cousin in our home Pokemon battles by poisoning them and then just clicking Protect and Substitute while their whole team died. Oh, the joys of youth, and oh, the joys of Gliscor. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to my amazing channel members and Sister Ceres, Sycamore, Dragonslayer Man, my lovely Caitlin, and Bestie Boo, Isaac. I know the videos have been slow. They'll probably continue to be slow for another few months. The Masters is causing me an incredible amount of psychological distress, but it's also pretty compelling. There's a lot of literature out there, and this video is my way of procrastinating, reading a small fraction of that literature. Anyway, thank you to my channel members. You guys are the best. As usual, the sample sets and team are in the description, and I'll see you all in the next one.